Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at the first issue of Boxes, which is an anthology edited by Stephen Ingram. It's called a comics magazine, and some of the early ads I had saw for it were focusing on the fact that there's some articles in it. It's really an anthology with a couple articles in it. So I didn't buy the first issue right away. I saw that someone I really like their work, Gareth Brooks, had an essay in the second one, and so I bought that and realized, oh, this is mostly comics, and so I've got both of them now. So as I do with anthologies, I just want to go through and give you like a peek of each artist that's in the book. I think that's the coolest thing about anthologies, and then let you kind of decide for yourself, if you want to follow up on any of the artists, you want to get the book, whatever. So the first one here is by Julie Campbell. This is called Accenter, and it's about like learning to love bird watching and a particular bird that she falls in love with. It's got it kind of looks like an ink wash style, but I'm pretty sure it's done all digitally. Mark Brady is someone who contributes to both issues that I have so far. Let me get the title of this right. He has this Southside Cash Money Concept Club. Is this repeat thing that he comes to. And I like the art on it a lot. I quite like the coloring and the style of the art. But also, I really love the premise of this. I've been thinking a lot lately, about different forms of story and entertainment that don't match like the sex, drugs, explosions type of, battles, enemies, those kinds of things. I'm looking for different types of stories. Japan's really good for that, obviously. So anytime I see someone playing with a new format of storytelling, it gets really exciting for me. And I think this one is really cool, where you have a club of people that are coming together and they're sharing their get rich quick ideas. Like they're trying to, as a club, come up with an idea for a product that will make them rich. And then each story is basically them going through like all the reasons why this idea is going to fail. I think that's a really interesting story structure. I think over time as well, with the few that I've read, this didn't really happen, but it's starting to where you get a sense of each character's personality as well and how they respond to things. And then I could see this expanding out to start getting to where you get to know the characters in their real life or whatever. But you don't need that because this quick little format is like quick and succinct and perfect. So this one was probably the perfect first one for me to read, because the idea at first seems really good, where they're like, hey, we're going to have this restaurant where there's a conveyor belt and there's all these spoons that go by, and each spoon has like a different, really one bite, like flavor bomb of some special recipe for things all over the world. Like, this is the best pasta, this is the best hamburger. And at first I thought, yeah, oh, I would love to go into just like a taste tester place. But then they do such a good job. Mark Brady does such a good job of trashing the idea that it's by the end you're like, yeah, that will probably never happen. And that's kind of the format for each one of these, and I really, really like this. I hope this is getting published somewhere else in collected versions as an online comic or something. I have to follow up on that. But I really find this to be an enjoyable format for storytelling, and I also think it's very well executed and quite enjoy the art. So Mark Brady was one of my favorite finds from these boxes. This one is by Sammy Ward. You can see like it's kind of I'm depressed, useless, I'm getting older, getting consumed by the earth. Nice black and white line art, more poetic. There's a story here by Beck Kubrick. It's a very, very Tilly Walden-ish comic, just in terms of style, the rendering approach, the conversation between the characters, like these two like runaway girls. While I was reading it, I just kind of felt like I was reading a Tilly Walden comic, which isn't a bad thing. Tilly Walden's very popular for a reason. But I think this artist will be more interesting as they grow outside of their very obvious direct one influence. The other most exciting artist to me in this first volume is Bob Turner. Bob Turner is doing these very cool, like iconographic things. I don't know if these are actually physically made or digitally. They look digitally made, like there's just textures mapped in or something. Some of the resolution of like the textures in here isn't so great, but the cartooning of these shapes with the textures put in them is really, really compelling to me. I've kind of been sketching like very simple stick figure forms like this a lot lately, and I really like, for some reason, to fill them in with a rock texture, which this also kind of has. So this is just very exciting for me to see someone working in such a reduced visual language in terms of shape, but making such complex compositions out of all of those simple shapes, putting the textures and the colors in there. I find a lot of that to be very inspiring. And then there's also an essay following that by Bob Turner, just about comics as a language. And the essays in this really don't do it for me, but I think other people could find them very helpful. I think for me, it's just like covering a lot of ground of stuff I've already thought about or talked about. But for people who haven't spent 40 years of their life, or 37 years of their life or whatever, obsessed with comics, it would be very helpful information. Another repeat feature in this first volume is The Travels of Captain Ishmael by Enrico Ariis. Really like the use of the spot color for the tones on here. This is something I'm planning on trying in bound, especially seeing like a cyanish color applied to a very small dot pattern for the sky and creating the sparkle. It's like, oh, yep, that's what I'm hoping to get in bound. I can see it here. It works perfectly. That's great. But yeah, just a fun little story where they're going around seeing all of these different cultures. This one is about an island that has the lonely city. So a guy escapes to this island, and finally he's his hermit in his paradise. It looks like my paradise. He's got a shack. He's got good Wi-Fi so he can get on the internet, and he can just isolate and do everything from the internet and have peace and quiet. Sounds amazing. Unfortunately, because he advertises on the internet, other people start showing up and it ruins paradise. And so they find a way to build these like isolation cubes that everyone can exist in, and then stack them on top of each other like a city, which then takes my dream and turns it into my nightmare. But I guess I could be happy if they were soundproof. I'm not sure. But yeah, the stories work like that, and they wind up being funny like that, kind of in a satirical way. This is a story by Stephen Ingram, the creator or editor of Boxes, at least the organizer of it, I'm assuming. And you see this one is kind of like a siren story here, where you get a guy pulled underwater. Really like the way that the images in here have been cropped, that things are zoomed in and cropped in ways that you wouldn't normally crop in storytelling, but the story remains perfectly clear. You're getting him sinking under the water, this really nice moon distortion effect. And it adds a lot of like abstract tension to the piece, so I think that's very cool. And I like the limited colors for being underwater. Christian Porter, really like the visuals in this one, the kind of abstractions of this as he's chasing this girl he saw who has like beautiful hair, and he's chasing her down to this castle. Kind of a little magical story, but really like the shape and color work. That's anyone who's been following the channel knows that I'm kind of headed towards shape and texture and color myself as an artist, and moving away from lines. So work like this is always cool and inspiring to me. It looks more like people who grew up on illustration coming to comics. There's a story by Mason Wilson here. This one, and not all of the ones in here, but a lot of them. My assessment of the book overall is that this feels kind of like someone is running a class on comics, and they're getting students of a wide range of skills, because each work is like experimental in a way that feels like someone is like, okay, we've thrown a bunch of ideas at you about what you can do with comics, and there's people like feel like they're trying stuff. But some of them, like Mason Wilson here, even though they're doing some really cool things with page composition and they're doing cool things with comics, like the rendering skills, the drawings are not all quite there yet. And there's just such a variety of like drawing levels throughout this that a lot of it does wind up feeling like advanced student work, but someone who's not quite ready to be a pro. There's nothing in here in terms of a mission statement that's saying how Stephen Ingram is choosing these artists, or whether there's submissions, people he knows. But I almost get the sense that this is someone teaching a class on comics and then putting, like, this is, the thesis of the class. You're putting it all together. That's kind of how this feels to me, in terms of just both like variety of skill levels and the experimental nature of everything. It feels like they've been given the elements and principles of comics and they're playing with those. This one here is about someone getting their earlobe reduced, the size of their earlobe reduced. I find this to be a particularly distressing image, but I like this like illustrative, I don't want to say clean line style because there's a lot of line variation and stuff, but kind of clean coloring book images with these flat colors, I think makes a powerful visual. But again, it feels like someone who's playing with an idea. It's not totally resolved yet in terms of like the colors having as much meaning within the narrative as they could, or something like that. And then the book closes out with a piece by Stephen Goodall, and I really enjoy some of the effects that are being created with the physical mediums. The layering up of colors and stuff is captured really well here. One of the students I'm collaborating with on a book currently, a book that will be called The Event, has a lot of watercolor and marker work that has some of these luminous qualities to it. And we've been having the hardest time trying to scan it or photograph it. So this makes me hopeful because it has some kind of the kind of color interactions that Bailey's using in The Event. Some of these almost neon yellows going over these magentas. And I really, really like this composition and the colors. And then also it's really encouraging, like I said, to see that these things can work. They can be reproduced. So a cool little anthology. As with most anthologies, it's kind of mixed. I found a couple people in here really strong, and like I said, a lot of this work feels like people right on the verge. People who are committed to this, they're into it, but they need to just push past a little bit. And I think it's really good for them to have a venue like this where they can see their work in print for the first time. That kind of changes how you think about your work as seeing it in print. So this magazine seems to serve that purpose to some extent, and for that reason I think it's like, really worth backing this project, finding the couple cool things out of here that you get out of the couple artists you want to follow up on, and then you're supporting these other artists and helping them improve and helping them like see their work in print, helping them improve what they're doing because they're up to some cool experimental stuff. They just need to see this in print a couple times. So really cool project. And I have a second one, and we'll take a look at that pretty soon.